which is concerned with the birth of sound in cinema. As you know, cinema existed for, depending how you count, a couple decades before sound was added to it in various ways. And so there was a crucial moment at which there was a transition from silent cinema to talkies and to further sound cinema beyond. Of course, it was never truly silent, as we also know, because there was often sound accompaniment. And you may have noticed to my left a couple of wonderful musicians. Tonight's speaker, presenter, screener, is Jeff Hinkelman. He's been for nearly a decade Carnegie Mellon's video and film librarian. He's a film and video historian who is almost complete with his PhD from our English department in film and the history and theory of film. His particular area of focus is sound in early cinema. And tonight, Jeff, who in my opinion is one of the most undiscovered and under-recognized treasures of Carnegie Mellon University, will be presenting for us a special presentation about noise and sound in cinema. Jeff is joined by Matt Zurch on guitar and by Brian Gilling on piano. And Jeff will be guiding them to accompany the various sound films that we'll be screening. So tonight you'll see a mixture of lecture, of screening, and of live performance. Before I give up the mic and pass it on to Jeff and his collaborating musicians, I just wanted to give a quick update about what else is going on for the watsON Festival. Please don't miss tomorrow night's events, which are starting, Spike, at what time? 7 tomorrow night in Kresge Auditorium. Tomorrow night's events include 4 performances by world-renowned electronic, electroacoustic, electromechanical, mechatronic performers. Plenty of seats down in front. Come on. Plenty of seats down in front. You get the front row. Here's our graphic designer, Eunice. She designed all the posters. Give a shout out for Eunice. Yeah. Tomorrow night's performances are we have 3 performances by local area musicians. They are Eric Singer, who's a mechatronics and robotics performance artist, Jeremy Boyle, who works in electronic music, and Michael Johnson, who works with circuit bent and other kinds of custom circuitry to produce and wrangle electronic sounds out of these machines. And after a brief intermission for dumplings, that will be followed by Leslie Flanagan, a wonderful singer-performer, electronics artist from New York City. She works with vocals and very carefully tuned feedback cycles with speakers and custom electronics. Really amazingly immersive, drone-like work that is truly transportive work. Leslie Flanagan, known for performing with her electronic music all around the world. So that performance, those sets of performances begin at 7 o'clock tomorrow night and will go to approximately about 9 o'clock with, as I mentioned, an intermission for dumplings. So please come. And that'll be in Kresge starting at 7. And now, it's my great pleasure to turn over the stage to Jeff Hinkelman. As I mentioned, nearly complete with his PhD and our truly under-recognized treasure here at Carnegie Mellon, our video and film historian. Please.
Thank you. Thanks to Golan, thanks to Spike, and thanks to everybody for turning out. It was a little amusing to me to be asked to talk at a festival dedicated to sound, since so much of the work that I do revolves around silent cinema. But that may sound ironic, but I intend to show you that it's really not. In 1877, Thomas Edison invented an exciting new piece of technology that changed the way we think about sound. Does anybody know what it is? Surely someone knows.
The phonograph?
The phonograph. Thank you, Golan. Yes, the phonograph. It took off like gangbusters. And 10 years later, it wasn't going like such gangbusters anymore, and Edison thought, partly prompted by a lecture that he probably attended, given by Igor Muybridge, that it might be a cool idea to buck up sales of the phonograph by adding pictures. So film sort of comes from sound. Now there are some problems with that. Unlike, there's some initial success, partly because Edison, well, he's kind of a thief. He arguably steals from Muybridge. There's a man named LaPrince. He may have had murder. It's very exciting. To prevent him from beating Edison to the punch. They get the film part working, and Edison makes his little devices. The kinetoscope. Does anybody ever go to Kenwood? Anyway, they have sort of devices like kinetoscopes. Kinetoscopes are little boxes that you look into and have a continuous running film strip that runs through them. That's a success. Edison wants to go further. He wants to make the kinetophone. He wants to put one of his phonographs inside the machine and have music play while you watch the film. And there are pictures of kinetophone devices where you have earbuds, basically, that you put in your ears and you watch the minute-long film strip go through the machine. There are some problems, though. Edison starts to lose his edge because projection of film starts to happen. Edison doesn't think it's going to take off. And he can never resolve three problems in attaching sound to projected film in particular. One is storage capacity. The discs that he uses only last for a few minutes, so it restricts the length of the film. Another is this exciting device in front of me. There's no effective way to amplify sound. To amplify sound, you use a giant horn, like a megaphone, and it does not amplify sound to a degree where a group like this can effectively hear the sound. And the last problem is the problem of synchronization, finding a way to get the sound to connect to the picture effectively. Fortunately for all of us, that is not really an issue as projected film takes off. People find other ways. There are three types of sound that probably in any case we deal with, but certainly in film. We have music, sound effects, and dialogue. Now music, when film starts to be projected, where is it projected? Does anyone know? Where?
From the front towards the audience.
No, it's projected from the back. I mean, what venue hosts the projection of film? Vaudeville halls host the projection of film. Film is used between vaudeville acts. So there are performers on stage already. There are performers in the pit. We keep them busy by letting them play music to accompany the images. From the very beginning, even given Edison's failure to find a way to effectively capitalize on his notions, there is music that accompanies film. And tonight, we have two musicians here because now we don't think of film working that way. The sound comes with the film or the image if we're watching on YouTube, which, by the way, as the video collection guy, I have to say I do not advocate YouTube. We all needed access to the films, so that's better, but everything we watch here is legal to project in this venue, unlike a lot of the stuff on YouTube. Anyway, so we will start by taking a look at this lecture is entitled, "What is the Sound of a Pig Dancing?" And we will answer that question right now. dancing pig and this performance. Brian and I met on Monday, something like that. He watched it maybe 3-4 times. And that's actually pretty accurate. For most of the silent era, a film would be projected in a theater. There would be a hired musician who sometimes didn't see the film before it started rolling. That is still the case at certain film festivals where silent film is shown, because sometimes a print doesn't arrive from an archive, and there are still a few people who specialize in creating music for silent films. Sometimes they don't see the movie, they don't know the plot, they don't know what's going to happen. You just get up and you roll with it. Now, we cheated a little bit here because I gave Brian some instructions. And that is something that could also happen during much of the silent era. With the film, you might be sent either a page, a cue sheet, that would say, when the pig starts dancing, play number 27. When the woman emerges, play number 13. When the creepy pig costume is shown in close-up, play number 12, or make this noise on the organ. The instructions that I gave to Brian were, in the first part, emphasize the pathos of the poor pig being rejected by the woman. In the second part, emphasize the sprightliness of the performance. And in the third part, do whatever weirdness you want to do to sound like a pig squealing. There we go with Matt on the guitar. Now, you can judge how effectively that worked. But those are the instructions. If you pretend that I'm the filmmaker, that's the amount of control that I have over what happens. I can say that, and then it's up to these guys. Or it's up to your Aunt Tilly, who plays piano at the theater, sometimes on the side on weekends in East Pittsburgh. Or your friend Ralph, who plays at a theater in Dormont. Everybody does their own thing. All right, let's try another one. This is an early Edison film. Sorry. Okay, does anybody recognize that piece of music, which is called what? The Anvil Chorus. Yes. Now, in this case, the cue sheet that I would have sent to Brian would say, play the Anvil Chorus. It's a well-known piece of classical music, and it evokes what's going on the screen. Okay, let's try another one. A famous film by the Lumiere brothers. John Henry, when he was a baby, sitting on his family's knee, picked up a hammer in his little right hand, said, "That'll be the death of me, Lord, Lord, that'll be the death of me." Some say he was from Texas, some say he was from Maine. I just say he was a Louisiana boy, leader of a steel driving chain gang, leader of a steel driving gang. instance, this film is made in France. There's perhaps an irony here. So that piece of music is in no way French. Okay? But as film circulates around the world, the people who are doing the accompanying are going to use what makes sense. There's a train, sing a song about John Henry. That makes sense for an American audience in Pittsburgh. Okay. Now, this last one, we're going to watch it twice. I gave these guys full license to do whatever they want. So, here we go. Okay. Brian's interpretation. George Mellier's The Dream. Let's give that a shot. Okay, two very different, both perfectly valid interpretations of what we're seeing on the screen. And remember that we're constrained by the fact that we have only two musicians. Throughout the silent era, it would make a difference whether we were watching this downtown in the Stanley Theater or the Nixon Theater, old vaudeville houses, or we were seeing it in a theater in Dormont, or we were maybe seeing it in a church basement. Because we might have a full orchestra in the big house. We might have 3 or 4 musicians in the second run house, and we might just have the pianist or somebody playing an accordion in the church basement. Okay, so music could be treated very differently. There's another aspect that we want to talk about, which is sound effects. Because silent films frequently had sound effects, sometimes to their detriment. People complained at times that the person in charge in the theater was going overboard with the sound effects. We'll see whether that happens here. So let's first try another Edison film. And we're not going to do music with this, we're just going to do sound effects. This is the real live Annie Oakley performing in Edison's studio, which is a little unfair to her because it constrains her marksmanship. She has to stay in the camera range, and so if it looks like she's missing a lot, it's really not her fault. I'm sure she was a really good shot. Ready, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to know this first. Wait, don't do anything. Don't start over. Sorry, it's my fault. Okay, great. Okay, so Matt had a few snaps. I thought about bringing in a toy gun, but then I was worried about images of me brandishing a assault rifle in the baseline. Okay, and then let's try one other one, which makes a lot of sense for this exercise. Okay, how about for the bowling alley? All right. I remember I said there were 3 categories. The third category is dialogue. A dialogue in a silent film. Initially, isn't a problem because we don't include it. Or if we do include it, there is a way to deal with dialogue early, which is not intertitles, not initially, not right away. A number of experiments are tried. One of them would involve, so that the Lumiere brothers, for example, when they were demonstrating their projection system, their camera would photograph, then you could develop the pictures, then you could project them. So they would go to scientific conferences and they would film people giving a presentation or the people arriving at the conference. And then they would develop the pictures, and later that evening they would project them. And there is an obvious way to experiment with sound. If I take a picture of these 2 guys talking, and then I develop and project it later, what do I ask those 2 guys to do? Sit behind the screen and recreate their conversation. Obviously that's not very effective, and if you're going to do that for a longer film, why not just have the 2 guys sit up and have the conversation, right? It just doesn't make sense. However, there is another method. Out for a stroll, a man has encountered his cousin on the street. He bids her farewell, but as he steps into the street, he's struck by a passing cab. A policeman sets off in pursuit. The woman is distraught. A passerby stops to help. Unexpectedly, however, the man is not hurt. He leaps up and runs off, overjoyed to be alive. Georges Méliès, who made a trip to the moon, would frequently write scripts to go with this film. It's not dialogue, it is speech, however, that should accompany the film. And there's something a little amusing about that, though, because let's try this again. A magician has been trying to woo a woman. He steps into the street as an accomplice drives by in a passing cab. The cab runs over the magician. The woman is distraught. Another accomplice examines him and pronounces him dead. But the trick works perfectly. Suddenly, the magician leaps up and runs off with the successfully wooed woman. All right, now you see the problem, perhaps? In some cultures, in Japan in particular, throughout the silent era, there are benshi, they are called, lecturers who stand up, as I am standing here before you, as a feature-length film is projected, and enact the film. There are still a few benshi in Japan. This does lead to the interesting complication, however, that, as I just did, the benshi sometimes don't like the story as given to them, and they make up their own. And they are popular enough, their performances are popular enough, that some people would argue that sound actually takes a little longer to get to Japan because people will go to a theater to watch a film and see their favorite benshi interpret the film, not to watch the film itself. All right, there's one other way to deal with dialogue before we get to your way. That is this. Okay, that's from a film called The Chamber of Mystery. I believe that's the only such attempt. Doesn't really take off. It's very labor intensive. But if we think about it with a properly open mind, it makes a lot of sense. Works in funny papers, works in a graphic novel, keeps the film moving in a way that an intertitle does not. There's no reason, it's not a problem, we all understand what's going on, right? But it's more labor intensive than an intertitle, it's harder to do, so it doesn't work. Instead, what does tend to work is something like this. I'm going to show a clip from Sunrise. Sunrise is considered in some quarters one of the greatest films ever made. It is also the first, could have been the first Best Picture winner. If anybody ever asks you what the first Best Picture winner is, the Academy answer is Wings. But the first year of the Academy Awards, there were 2 awards given out. One was for Most Outstanding Production, which was won by Wings, meaning the lowliest. Second was the Most Artistic Production, which was won by Sunrise. After sound comes in, which is the next year, the second year of the Academy Awards, there are a lot of film producers who have a lot of money wrapped up in sound technology. They have no interest whatsoever in letting people think there's anything good about a silent film. They do such a good job of that that many people still think that way. But that's not usually on the merits. That's because of a smear job that they do on their own work, because they got a lot of money invested in sound film. Anyway, let's take a brief look at Sunrise. The setup is that the man, George O'Brien, has been beguiled by a woman from the city, and he has earlier attempted to kill his wife on their trip to the city. But he's realized the error of his ways, and he is now trying to figure out how to deal with her as they are in the city. All right, a couple of things. Now, Sunrise is considered, it is in many ways exemplary of the pinnacle of silent film. First of all, it tells a story that is a fable. They walk out of the church, they are lost in their recovered love. The two characters don't even have names in this film, it's the man and the woman. And they walk out so wrapped up in each other that they don't notice they're walking into the street. We see him recover his love for the woman in his performance. In Sunset Boulevard, Gloria Swanson says, "We had faces then." In silent film, it's no funnier than kabuki. I mean, if you laugh at kabuki, then go ahead and laugh at silent film. But it's the same thing. It's a different kind of acting because you can't rely on your voice. You don't have sound. You use your entire body to perform. And we're not used to it now because we don't do that anymore. There's something else this film clip shows. And the music that is playing here and the sound effects were married to this film early. But the studio didn't do that, let's say. It would not have been seen by most people with this score and sound effects. It would have been seen by most people silent with an accompaniment. And we can see just in this clip, does silent film have a problem portraying sound? There are bells ringing. There are clearly horns honking. We can see that. We can fill that in for ourselves. We don't need that sound. Maybe it helps that it's there, maybe it doesn't. It's not a requirement for this particular film. And you see that throughout silent cinema. A stutter can be portrayed because somebody's head is moving, and maybe the accompanist plays a stutter note on a piano. A cow, we can make, sort of a moving sound with the instrumentation available to us. We've seen it with the pig. We can make a reasonably effective squealing pig noise. Silent film could create sounds visually. So, it was all right with that. Now, we also see the intertitles here and how they would effectively work. You always try to use as few intertitles as possible, but you can't always do that. So they're reasonably unobtrusive, and once you're used to them, then we're good. This film was released the first week of October, 1927. The same week, another film was released. Christy, what film was that?
The Jazz Singer.
The Jazz Singer was released. We all celebrate Jazz Singer Day on October 6th, right? Yes. Now, The Jazz Singer is erroneously called the first sound film. It isn't really. If anyone has sat through The Jazz Singer, you realize that most of it is a silent film with, basically, they took music videos of Al Jolson and inserted them into a full-length silent narrative. And initially, as sound took off, the studio heads believed that this was a more likely use for sound, what we just saw in Sunrise, than anything else. Their purpose in introducing sound was to regularize and maintain control over the sound that you heard, so that Aunt Tilly, your friend Ralph, and these guys are out of the picture. The studio heads control what you hear, and everyone can hear it. Now, if you've been watching films in the church basement, that's a benefit. You can hear a full orchestra. But it also does remove any variability. And that's a good thing for the studios. They want everything to be the same. Now the problem is, as sound is first introduced, the first true all-talking picture is called Lights of New York. Let's watch a few minutes of that and see what sound does to film.
Oh, boy. How are you? Sit down. Have a cigar. Well, what's on your mind, boy?
Splendid. You heard about Sam Kerwin being bumped off, of course.
I certainly did. There's an extra out about it. Did you land the guy that did it?
No, but we're well off.
Well, I hope so. It's pretty tough when a cop is bumped off. They're my best friends.
Yes, and it's going to be tough on the guy who did it.
Well, I hope you get the dirty rat. Any ideas?
No. Have you?
Me? Why, what ideas would I have about a job like that?
I was thinking you might know something. And if you do know, it would be a good idea to talk.
Well, I ain't got nothing to say.
Well, I have. This killing was a bootleg job, and it concerns liquor. Until we know who killed that cop, we're going to close every joint. Yes, this one's first.
Gee, that's pretty tough, boy. Well, I'd like to help you. You got any clues?
Nothing much. The stuff they was after was old century. I haven't seen any before this job in 2 years.
Old century.
Yes. There was a few cases missing. The ones that did the job took some of the stuff. See any around?
Boy, what's the matter? Surely you don't think that I would have any stuff like that lying around, do you? That or any other stuff?
We're not thinking anything, Hawk. But it's about time you began thinking. You probably could tell us plenty. So open your trap and say something.
Boy, you know I'm not a squealer, don't you? You know I've always been on the up and up, don't you? Why, I wouldn't hurt a pal for the world. But when it comes to killing a cop, I'm against it.
Well, come on.
You say the guy that did the job got away with some cases of old century?
Yes.
Well, I might be able to help you. I think I got a clue.
Where? Who?
I can't say just now, but you know where the White Lake Bar? shop is, don't you?
Over on 46th Street?
Right. Well, you be there at 10 o'clock, and I might show you something interesting. Get me?
Does anyone not know where the microphone is? It's a problem. I also stopped Golan, or tried to, from turning up the sound. Because guess what? Sometimes it's just hard to hear. The technology's not good enough. But there are now a whole host of questions, many of which are illustrated by that clip. Am I acting with my body, or am I acting with my voice? If I'm acting with my voice, must I enunciate every word carefully? Can a secondary care, I always feel so terrible for that older gentleman, who, I don't know him, he probably had a long career as an extra prior to this, and he really doesn't know what to do. The poor man is completely at sea. Does he talk? If he talks, will he interrupt or prevent people from hearing what's actually going on? What about the sound effects? Are there any? Not really. That wall with the hidden cabinet behind it rolls up more smoothly than anything you've ever, a lot of WD-40 on that. Right? It's right up there. How about the music? Do we have music? We do have music. What happens to the music when the door closes? There is no music. We don't mix things. We want to focus on the dialogue. There are all sorts of questions about how we do this. Where does the sound come from? In this case, the sound has to go into that microphone in the middle. Is that natural? Is it real? Of course not. But that's what we can do. So that's what we do. One of the people who most effectively deals with the coming of sound is the creator of one of our great movie stars. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? We still all watch his works as children. They're re-released every 7 years on a regular schedule. We go visit his land and his world. Now, I'm not going to show Steamboat Willie. It's a little cliched. I've decided to show something else. Let's switch back here. Because cartoons deal with sound really well. Why is that? Precisely because they're not real. They don't have to worry about it. So let's take a look a few years in. This is from 1933. And a successful use of sound.
direction. Oh me, oh my, ain't that perfection? My baby, you're pretty kind of sweet, and I ask you very confidently, ain't she?
Wasn't that a peachy song? Those who sang it never went wrong. So while the basketball gives you the tempo, won't you folks all follow along? Ain't she sweet? She's coming down the street. Now I ask you very confidentially. Ain't she? Oh, ain't she nice? Look over once or twice. And I ask you very confidentially. Ain't she nice? Just answer now. In her affection. Oh, me on fire. Ain't that perfection? I repeat, don't think she's kind of sweet. And I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? There she is, there she is. That's what keeps you up at night. Oh, gee whiz, you can't even eat a bite. Those flaming eyes, that's flaming you. Oh, sister, tell me the truth. Ain't she sweet? She's coming down the street. Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Oh, ain't she nice? Look her over once or twice, and I ask you very confidentially, ain't she nice? Just can't deny. In her direction, oh, me, oh, my, ain't that perfection? I repeat, don't think she's kind of deep, and I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet?
Ain't she sweet? She's coming down the street. I ask you very confidently,
Ain't she sweet?
ain't she nice? Look over once or twice, and I ask you very confidently, ain't she nice? Just can't deny in her affection. Oh, me, oh, my, ain't that perfection? My baby, don't think she's kind of sweet, and I ask you very confidently,
Ain't she sweet?
ain't she sweet? Ain't she sweet? Ain't she sweet?
And ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet?
Okay, now there's an interesting issue with that. Which not, I should leave that one on so I can see you. I did hear 2 or 3 people singing along, but the introduction of sound fundamentally changes a number of relationships. First, it changes the relationship of the performers to what's going on to the camera. Douglas Fairbanks famously says that when he makes his first sound picture in 1929, that as he walks into the sound stage, that the romance of picture making ends here. Prior to the introduction of sound, a movie place was a vibrant place. You could have 3 productions going on in a space this large, and in each one of them, the director would be shouting at the actors, we need more tears, be more sad, be more happy. The performers would be speaking. When sound comes in on the production level, of course, we need quiet on the set. Completely changes the way that films are produced and made. It also, however, changes the relationship of the audience to the screen. The reason the bouncing ball is the famous bouncing ball of the Fleischer Brothers is because they were making these cartoons years before. In the silent era, the accompanists would know the tune and play it. And guess what? The audience would sing along. We don't do that so much anymore. My grandfather would talk about going in the 30s down to a street corner, and there'd be people there, and everybody would just have a sing-along and sing. We don't do that anymore, and certainly not in a theater. The only time we do this is when? When do we do this?
Karaoke.
Well, karaoke, that's not quite the same thing.
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. We have now the Sound of Music sing-along. When is it acceptable to sing along, though?
Birthday song?
It's not for us.
Church?
When, at church, though frankly at my church anyway, even in church, people don't sing along with the same gusto that they used to. My minister used to say, it doesn't matter if you can't sing, just make a joyful noise to the Lord, right? That's okay. But no, when we're children, Disney continues to profit from sing along. Instead of following a bouncing ball, you follow the decapitated head of Mickey Mouse, right along with the lyrics, and then it's okay to sing along. But here, I think I heard Matt singing along and maybe 2 or 3 other people singing along. We don't do that so much. That is a change. And that is a level of control that we're sort of surrendering to the experience of going to see the movies. We're not, this is not participatory. We sit quietly and watch. Okay, the studio is like that. They like that level of control. And we end up with, let me show a brief example that presumably many of you may have seen of what classical Hollywood cinema, how it deals with sound.
It has to be you. It has to be you. I've wandered around and finally found somebody who could make me be true, could make me be, and even be glad just to be sad, thinking of some others I've seen. I'd never be me. I could never be crawled or try to be bold, but they wouldn't do. Oh, nobody else gave me a thrill, honey, with all your balls. I love you still, had to be you. Wonderful you, had to be. Oh, my hair is curly. Oh, my teeth are burly.
Waiting. I'll never get out of here. I'm dying so old.
But can't you make it just a little more, please?
Sorry, madam, but diamonds are a drug on the market. Everybody sells diamonds. There are diamonds everywhere. 2,400.
All right.
The folks are waiting, the men are waiting. Everything is garbage.
Mr. Fishing Smack Santiago. He leaves at 1 tomorrow night. Here from the end of La Medina. 3rd boat.
Thank you.
And bring 15,000 francs in cash. Remember, in cash.
That's all. Hey, that
Cheerio.
Oh, Madame Doyle.
Yes, sir, Professor.
You'll grab the floor.
C'est pour Madame. Là, pour Monsieur.
Waiter,
Yes, Madame.
will you ask Rick if he has a drink with us?
Madame, he never drinks with customers. Never. I have never seen it.
What makes the keeper so snobbish?
Perhaps if you told him I ran the 2nd largest banking house in Amsterdam. The 2nd largest? That wouldn't impress Rick. The leading bank in Amsterdam is now the pastry chef in our kitchen. We have something to look forward to. And his father is the bellboy.
Pause it there so it doesn't move into the next clip. Okay, we see how sound works here. We want sound, the use of sound, to contribute to the narrative. We want to keep the story moving. We don't want the audience to think, what's up with that particular sound? There are sound effects here. They are dialed down at the appropriate time. There is music to set the tone. It is dialed down at the appropriate time. There is, one of the things when sound comes in, I didn't mention before, of course, is how do we deal with foreign languages? Well, here we have them in the background. Nothing important is ever said in the foreign language, of course, because no one would ever understand it. They provide a little color. If something important is going to be said, we get an actor who has what? an accent. We use an accent, and that's foreignness. They're still speaking English. Sound, music, dialogue. And this is arguably the way that it works still, for the most part. However, the difference is now when, if it doesn't work like this, it's because the filmmaker wants us to notice something, such as so in that case, that's Kwaidan by Masaki Kobayashi. He's manipulating the sound because that is a ghost story and it's creepy. And he wants it to be creepy, which is why it can be unconventional. The guy is thinking about his wife, who he left behind to go compete to try to win acclaim. And we're hearing what he's hearing, the pounding horses' hooves. We don't hear the crowd yelling, everybody gestures, but we don't hear anything. But that's because the guy is focused. And then we see the creepy surreality of his ghostly wife. And it's okay to do weird things with sound in that case. Also, in a case like that, for an American audience, it's okay because what kind of film is that? That's an art film, and they do weird stuff. Continuing in that vein. When I say art films do weird stuff, I mean that honorifically. Hollywood has established a system that doesn't do that frequently. And that's what these films are for. If you want to look, if you want to push the boundaries of what's available in sound, that's what these films are doing. Qui-Gon does that by using the sound as a music score almost, by shaping the sounds. And in some cases replacing the dialogue with those sounds. The Barons, who composed the score for the film we just watched, they're pioneers of electronic music. Their most famous work is probably Forbidden Planet. They do manage to go mainstream with Forbidden Planet. And sometimes,
those are actually repurposed sounds from Forbidden Planet. So they didn't have enough time to score that film, so they recycled sounds that they used on Forbidden Planet and they used it for Bridges Go Round.
right, and then there were rights issues, so Clark actually had another score commissioned
Sarah did the other
for that.
one.
And then sometimes we can go a little more conventional, but not quite. A little more mainstream, let's say. As in Gerald McCoy.
Things that happened to that little boy. They say it all started when Gerald was 2. That's the age kids start talking, at least most of them do. Well, when he started talking, you know what he said? He didn't talk words. He went... cried his father, his face turning gray. That's a very odd thing for a young boy to say. And poor Gerald's father rushed to the phone and quick dialed the number of Dr. Malone. father fled. Our boy can't speak words. He goes boing, boing instead.
I see,
Said the doctor.
it's just as you said. He doesn't speak words. He goes boing, 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 boing instead. I've no cure for this. I can't handle the case.
And he packed up his pills and walked out of the place. Then months passed, and Gerald got louder and louder, till one day he went like a big keg of powder. It was then that his father said, "This is enough. He'll drive us both mad with this terrible stuff. A boy of his age shouldn't sound like a fool. He's got to learn words. We must send him to school." From Public School 7 to Mrs. McCloy, your little son Gerald's a most hopeless boy. We cannot accept him, for we have a rule that pupils must not go in our school. Your boy will go all his life, I'm afraid. Sincerely yours, Fanny Schultz, teacher, first grade. But as little Gerald grew older, he found when a fella goes, no one wants him around. When a fella goes, he can't have any pals, and is fighting the gal.
Yeah.
They all shouted,
Your name's not McCoy. You're Gerald McCoy, the noise-making boy.
Gerald McCoy, the man who makes sweeps. Boy, I have searched for you many long weeks. I can make you the most famous lad in the nation, for I own a radio station. I need a smart fellow to make all the sounds, who can bark like a dog and bay like the hounds. Your gong is terrific, your toot is inspired. We've come to... McCoy, you're hired!
The Dalton gang stuck up the stagecoach at noon, and the varmints are holed up in Fancy's saloon. The sheriff can't get at him. Not even the law knows how to be 23 men in a draw.
Now hold on there, partner. One fellow knows how. It's Silent Sam Steelheart, and here he comes now. now his parents, proud parents, are able to boast that their Gerald is known coast to coast. Now Gerald is rich, he has friends, he's well fed. Because he doesn't speak words, he goes instead.
Okay. So partly what I'm saying here is we've arrived at a point where we notice sound when our attention is drawn to it, which makes this one of the most radical things we can now do. Now, this film, of course, may win a Best Picture Oscar, but it is not a financial success. It is too radical of an experiment. So we start with the question, what is the sound of a dancing pig? At one point, we would have answered that question in 100 different ways, in 1,000 different ways. Now, we want that question to be answered in a single way, and we're all okay with that. And that's the thought I'll leave you with.